I stood in the corner of the Crystal Ballroom at the Bellingham Hotel, deliberately wearing a wrinkled Target dress and scuffed dollar store flats, watching my former in-laws whisper and point at me like I was a stain on their imported marble floors. Marcus Jones, my billionaire ex-husband, stood 50 feet away in a $10,000 suit, his arm around some Instagram model who probably didn't know the difference between a stock portfolio and a grocery list. But that wasn't what made my heart pound. It was watching his mother, Patricia Jones, lean over to her sister and say loud enough for me to hear, "I always knew that gold-digging trash would show her true colors eventually." This was a test. My test. And they were failing spectacularly. But to understand how I got here, standing in $1,000 plate charity gala dressed like I couldn't afford the valet parking, I need to go back to 6 months earlier, to the day Marcus asked for a divorce in the same restaurant where he proposed. The Ivy Room. Table 7. Same white tablecloth, same pretentious waiter named Philippe, completely different man sitting across from me. "You've changed, Lucy," Marcus had said, not even looking up from his phone. "You're not the woman I married." I remember thinking, you're right. The woman you married believed you when you said love mattered more than money. We'd met 7 years ago when I was a social worker making $38,000 a year, and he was already building his second startup. I drove a 1998 Honda Civic with a dented bumper. He drove a Tesla. On our first date, I'd insisted on splitting the bill at a diner. $23.47 was my half, because I didn't want him thinking I was after his money. He'd laughed, said it was refreshing, said I was different from all the women who saw dollar signs when they looked at him. His family hated me from day one. Patricia Jones had pulled me aside at our engagement party, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gripped my arm. "Sign the prenup, dear. Let's not pretend you don't know what you're doing." Her smile had been sharp enough to cut glass. Marcus's father, Richard, had simply looked through me like I was invisible, which somehow felt worse. I signed the prenup. Didn't even read it carefully. Because I loved Marcus, and I was stupid enough to think that mattered. Now, before I tell you what happened at that gala, I need to know something. Have you ever been judged by people who didn't even try to know you? Have you ever been made to feel small by people who should have been family? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from, your city, your state, your country. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to seem unbelievable, and I need you to know you're not alone if you've ever felt like you had to prove your worth to people who already decided you were worthless. Hit that like button right now and subscribe because this story has a twist that's going to make you want to call your own in-laws. I'm serious. Your support means everything to me, and honestly, sharing this story is hard, but knowing you're listening makes it easier. So please, take 2 seconds, like, subscribe, and drop your location in the comments. I read every single one. Now, let me tell you about the 6 months between my divorce and that gala, and how I planned the most satisfying test of my life. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday, March 15th. I remember because it was the Ides of March, and I'd always been a nerd for Shakespeare. Beware the Ides of March. Funny how that worked out. The prenup I'd barely read 7 years earlier turned out to be airtight. I got $50,000. That was it. Marcus walked away with his 3 companies, his stock portfolio worth an estimated $1.2 billion, the penthouse, the lake house, the villa in Tuscany. I walked away with enough money to rent a 1-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood and maybe survive for a year if I was careful. His lawyer, a shark in a Bryony suit named Davidson, had smirked when he slid the check across the table. "Mrs. Jones, oh, I suppose it's Ms. Howard again now. I trust this is sufficient." I'd smiled, nodded, said thank you. What I didn't say, I'd spent the last 3 months of my marriage documenting everything. See, Marcus thought I was stupid. They all did. The social worker who married above her station. Patricia had actually said that at a family dinner once, above her station, like we were living in a Victorian novel. They thought I spent my days shopping and getting my nails done, playing the trophy wife. They didn't know I'd kept working. I'd taken a job at a non-profit called Second Chances, helping women rebuild their lives after divorce. 20 hours a week, completely volunteer. I hadn't told Marcus because by that point we barely spoke, and I knew he'd make some comment about me playing poor or slumming it with the unfortunates. But those women taught me something crucial. Information is power. So when Marcus started coming home later, when the smell of perfume that wasn't mine started clinging to his suits, when his mother started making pointed comments about how a proper wife would try harder to keep her husband interested, I didn't fall apart. I started taking notes. I documented every family gathering, every snide comment, every deliberate exclusion. Did you know they had a family group chat that I wasn't included in? I found out by accident when Marcus's phone buzzed during dinner one night. The preview said, "Patricia Jones in Jones family, make sure Lucy doesn't find out about the foundation gala. We don't need her embarrassing us." That was 4 months before he asked for the divorce. The foundation gala. The annual Jones Family Foundation charity event, where Marcus's family donated obscene amounts of money to causes they'd never actually worked with, all while patting themselves on the back and getting their photos in society magazines. It was their Super Bowl. Their Met Gala. The one night a year where they could show off their wealth and pretend it made them good people. And they didn't want me there. After the divorce, I got a new job. Real job this time, with a salary. I became the director of client services at Second Chances. $45,000 a year. Not much by Jones family standards, but honest work. I rented a small apartment in Brooklyn, furnished it with IKEA and Facebook Marketplace finds, and started rebuilding my life. But I couldn't stop thinking about that gala. My friend Teresa, another divorce survivor I'd met through Second Chances, noticed I was obsessing. We were having coffee at a shop where they didn't know how to pronounce macchiato and didn't care, and she just put her hand over mine and said, "What are you planning, Lucy?" "I want to go to the gala," I'd said. "The one they specifically excluded you from." "That's the one." "Honey, why would you torture yourself like that?" I'd stirred my coffee, watching the cream swirl. "Because I want to see what they do. I want to watch them be exactly who they are when they think I'm broken." Teresa had studied my face. She was 53, had survived a nightmare marriage to a lawyer who tried to leave her with nothing, and fought her way back to a life she loved. She understood revenge, but she also understood healing. "This isn't about revenge," I'd said, answering her unspoken question. "It's about proof. For myself. I need to know if they're really as awful as I think, or if I'm just bitter. And if they are, then I'll know I'm better off without them. And maybe." I'd hesitated. Maybe I'll finally stop wondering if I was the problem. That was the truth. After 7 years of being treated like an outsider, of never being quite good enough, of watching Marcus slowly transform from the man who loved my authenticity into someone who seemed embarrassed by it, I'd started to believe them. Started to think maybe I was the gold digger Patricia claimed. Maybe I was an embarrassment. Maybe I should have tried harder, dressed better, been more like them. I needed to test that theory. The gala was invitation only, but I still had friends. Specifically, I had Claudia Martinez, who ran the catering company the Jones family always used. She'd loved me from day one because I was the only Jones who actually talked to the staff like they were human beings. I'd helped her daughter with college applications. I'd brought her soup when she had pneumonia. I called her 3 weeks before the gala. "Lucy, mi amor, how are you? I heard about the divorce. That man is a fool. Claudia, I need a favor. A weird one. Name it. I need to get into the Jones Foundation gala." There was a pause. Then, "Esther's loca. Why would you want to go back to those Viboras?" "I need to see something. Can you get me in?" Another pause. "I can get you in as staff. Serving drinks. Is that okay?" "Actually, that's perfect. But Claudia, I need you to not tell anyone. Can you do that?" "Lucy, for you? Of course. But please, be careful. That family, they're not good people." "I know. That's what I need to prove." The plan evolved over the next 3 weeks. I wasn't just going to show up as staff. That would be too obvious, too easy for them to dismiss. I was going to show up as a guest, but dressed like I could barely afford to be there. I was going to look like exactly what Patricia had always accused me of being, a nobody trying to crash their world. I bought the dress at Target. $34.99. Clearance rack. Polyester blend, slightly wrinkled because I deliberately left it bunched in my closet. The shoes came from a discount store, $12, scuffed because I'd walked around my apartment in them, dragging my feet. I did my own hair, purposely leaving it a little messy. No jewelry except my dead grandmother's simple gold cross necklace, worth maybe $50. I looked at myself in the mirror before I left and almost laughed. 7 years ago, this was exactly how I'd looked when Marcus met me. He'd loved it then. Called me refreshingly real. I wondered what he'd call me now. Claudia got me in through the service entrance. "You're sure about this?" she'd asked, looking at my outfit with concern. "Positive. Thank you, Claudia. There's a ticket waiting for you at the registration desk. Name's under Maria Gonzalez. She's my cousin. She was supposed to come but got sick. No one will check carefully." The Bellingham Hotel ballroom was everything I remembered. Crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses. Ice sculptures. A champagne fountain. Women in gowns that required second mortgages. Men in tuxedos discussing mergers and acquisitions like they were talking about the weather. And there they were. Patricia saw me first. I watched her face cycle through confusion, recognition, and something that looked almost like fury. She was wearing red, always red, her power color, with diamonds that probably cost 6 figures. She grabbed her sister Eleanor's arm and whispered something, both of them staring at me like I was a cockroach that had scuttled onto their dinner plate. Marcus was talking to some tech bros near the bar. He hadn't seen me yet. The Instagram model, Brittany, Tiffany, was hanging on his arm, looking bored. Richard Jones, Marcus's father, was holding court near the silent auction tables. He spotted me and his expression didn't change at all. That practiced neutrality that said, "You are beneath my notice." I took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, not Claudia's staff, she'd made sure of that, and positioned myself near a pillar where I could observe. The test had begun. Patricia made her move first, of course. She glided over with Eleanor, both of them wearing matching expressions of barely concealed disgust. "Lucy." My name in her mouth sounded like a curse. "What a surprise. I didn't realize you'd received an invitation." "The foundation does such important work," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I wouldn't miss it." Eleanor looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my Target dress, my cheap shoes. "How have you been managing? I imagine the adjustment has been difficult." This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. Would they be kind? Would they show even a shred of basic human decency? "It's been an adjustment," I admitted, letting my voice crack just slightly. "But I'm managing. I have a job now, working with a non-profit." "How quaint," Patricia interrupted, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Playing social worker again. Though I suppose now it's not playing anymore, is it? Now it's necessary." Eleanor laughed. Actually laughed. "We were just saying," Patricia continued, lowering her voice like she was sharing a confidence, but speaking loud enough for the people around us to hear, that it's so important to live within your means. Some people just aren't cut out for a certain lifestyle, you know? Better to find that out sooner rather than later. My chest felt tight, but I kept my expression neutral. "I appreciate the wisdom." "Oh, honey," Eleanor said, putting her hand on my arm in a gesture that might have looked sympathetic to observers but felt like a brand. "We know this must be hard for you. Going from everything to, well, but you'll land on your feet. Your kind always does." "Your kind." I excused myself before I said something I'd regret. Found a bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and took deep breaths. Pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app. I'd been recording since I walked into the ballroom. Every word. Every inflection. This was just the beginning. Over the next hour, I made my way through the party, deliberately seeking out Marcus's family members. His younger brother Thomas saw me and immediately turned away, actually putting his back to me mid-conversation with someone else. His cousin Jennifer made a point of introducing her husband to everyone nearby except me, talking around me like I was invisible. And then Marcus saw me. I watched him process it, the confusion, the recognition, and then something that might have been embarrassment. He excused himself from his group and walked over. Brittany or Tiffany stayed behind, looking relieved. "Lucy, what are you doing here?" "Supporting the foundation," I said simply. "Is that a problem?" He looked uncomfortable. The old Marcus, the one who'd loved me, would have asked how I was. Would have showed some concern. This Marcus looked around to see who was watching. "You look..." He trailed off. "Different," I supplied. I was going to say tired. He had the decency to look slightly ashamed. "Are you doing okay? Financially, I mean. Because if you need..." "I'm fine, Marcus. I have a job. I'm taking care of myself." His mother appeared at his elbow like a materialized demon. "Marcus, darling, the mayor wants to meet you. Lucy, if you'll excuse us." It wasn't a question. Marcus hesitated for just a second, and in that second, I saw it. He was going to leave. He was going to choose his mother over basic kindness to the woman he'd spent 7 years with. "Of course," I said before he could speak. "Don't let me keep you." I watched them walk away, Patricia's hand proprietarily on her son's arm, and I felt something inside me settle. This wasn't grief anymore. It was clarity. The evening continued like a masterclass in cruelty. Small cuts, each one designed to remind me I didn't belong. The woman from Marcus's office who'd always been friendly suddenly didn't recognize me. The couple we used to have dinner with every month walked right past me without a glance. Even the staff, not Claudia's people, but the hotel staff, seemed to treat me differently, like they could smell my reduced bank account. But it was the auction that broke something open. The Jones Family Foundation was auctioning off a week at their Tuscany villa. The same villa where Marcus and I had spent our honeymoon, where I'd learned to make pasta from the local nonna who came to cook for us, where we'd made love under stars so bright they looked fake. Patricia was presenting the auction lot, standing at the podium in her red dress and her diamonds. "This beautiful property," she was saying, "has been in our family for 15 years. It's a place of love, of family, of tradition. We're so pleased to offer it to someone who will appreciate its significance." She looked right at me when she said it. Right at me. The bidding started at $10,000. It climbed quickly. 15, 20, 30. Finally selling for $45,000 to some hedge fund manager who probably wouldn't even use it. I stood there with my $7 glass of champagne and my $34 dress, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Because this was it. This was proof. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't oversensitive. These people were exactly as cruel as I'd feared, and now I had evidence. Hours of recorded conversations, behavioral patterns, witnesses who could verify that I'd been nothing but polite while they'd been systematically dismissive. I was about to leave when Marcus found me again. He looked drunk, not sloppy, but loose in a way that meant the expensive scotch had been flowing. "Lucy, wait." I turned. "I'm sorry," he said. "About all of this. About them. About how things ended." "Are you, Marcus? Are you really?" He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. "You have to understand, my family, they have certain expectations. I was your wife for 7 years. What about your expectations for them? Did you ever once defend me?" He looked away. That was answer enough. "That dress," he said, changing the subject. "You're really struggling, aren't you?" And there it was. Even Marcus, even the man who'd once claimed to love me for being real, had bought into his family's narrative. He saw my simple clothes and assumed poverty. Assumed failure. He had no idea I'd dressed this way on purpose. "I'm doing exactly what I need to do," I said. "Look, the 50,000, if it's not enough." "It's enough, Marcus. More than enough. Because unlike your family, I know the difference between being broke and being broken. And I'm neither." I left before he could respond. Claudia was waiting by the service entrance. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. Did you get what you needed, Mia Moore? I nodded against her shoulder. I did. Good. Now promise me you'll never come back to these people. I promise. I went home that night to my small apartment with the IKEA furniture and the Facebook Marketplace coffee table, and I didn't cry. I sat on my second-hand couch and played back the recordings. Every snide comment. Every dismissive gesture. Every moment of deliberate cruelty. And then I did something that surprised me. I deleted them. Because I realized something standing in that ballroom, watching Marcus's family perform their elaborate pantomime of superiority. I didn't need proof. Not for them. The only person who needed convincing was me. And I was convinced. They had failed my tests so spectacularly that keeping evidence felt redundant. I didn't need to expose them. They were already exposed. To anyone who cared to look, their cruelty was obvious. The staff knew. The other guests who'd witnessed their behavior knew. And most importantly, I knew. Teresa called the next morning. How did it go? Exactly as I expected. Worse, maybe. And, how do you feel? I thought about it, sitting in my sunny kitchen with my $5 thrift store coffee mug, looking out at my view of other people's fire escapes. Free, I said. I feel free. Free enough to move on. Free enough to already be moved on. The weeks after the gala were different. Lighter. I stopped checking Marcus's social media. Stopped wondering what his family was saying about me. Stopped caring about a world that had never wanted me in it anyway. I threw myself into my work at Second Chances. Started a support group for newly divorced women, using everything I'd learned. I took a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to do but Marcus had dismissed as arts and crafts. I made the ugliest vase in human history, and I loved it. I went on a few dates. Nothing serious, but men who worked normal jobs and didn't spend the entire dinner checking their stock portfolio. A teacher named David who made me laugh. A graphic designer named Marcus, different Marcus, sweet Marcus, who actually asked about my life and listened to the answers. 3 months after the gala, I got a call from an unknown number. Ms. Howard. This is Jennifer Chen from the New York Times. I'm working on a piece about high society charity organizations and their actual impact versus their publicity. Your name came up in my research as someone who might have insight into the Jones Family Foundation. Would you be willing to talk? My first instinct was to say no. To stay away, stay quiet, don't make waves. But then I thought about all the women I worked with at Second Chances. Women who'd been made to feel small by powerful people. Women who'd been gaslit into believing they were the problem. Yes, I said. I'd be willing to talk. The article ran 6 weeks later. The charity industrial complex. When galas matter more than good splashed across the Sunday edition. It wasn't just about the Jones family, but they featured prominently. Their foundation's actual charitable work versus their operating expenses. The percentage of funds that went to executive salaries versus programs. The way they used the foundation for tax breaks and social climbing. I was quoted anonymously, but I'd provided documentation. Tax records that were public but that no one had bothered to examine. Event budgets. Comparisons to other foundations doing similar work with a fraction of the overhead. The article went viral. Marcus called me for the first time since the divorce. Did you do this? Did I write a New York Times article? No, Marcus. I'm not a journalist. You know what I mean. Did you talk to them? I provided publicly available information to a reporter doing a story about charitable foundations. Is that a problem? My mother is. She's furious. The board is asking questions. This could affect our donors. Then I guess you should run your foundation better. Jesus, Lucy. When did you become so vindictive? That word. Vindictive. Like telling the truth was an attack. I'm not vindictive, Marcus. I'm just not invisible anymore. There's a difference. He hung up. I'd like to say I felt triumphant, but mostly I felt tired. Tired of the Jones family drama. Tired of being cast as the villain in their story when all I'd ever done was exist in a space they thought I didn't belong. But something unexpected happened after the article. I got an email from Patricia. Subject line, "We need to talk." I almost deleted it. Almost. But curiosity won. "Lucy, I think we got off on the wrong foot. All of us. Perhaps we could meet for coffee and discuss things civilly. I'm willing to admit that the family may have been unwelcoming. But that article has caused significant damage to our reputation, and I think we should address this before it goes any further. Please consider meeting with me. For Marcus's sake, if nothing else." For Marcus's sake. Even in her attempt at an olive branch, she couldn't help but manipulate. I wrote back, "Patricia, I appreciate the offer, but I don't think we have anything to discuss. I've moved on with my life. I suggest you do the same with yours. I wish you and your family well." I meant it. I actually did wish them well, in the abstract way you wish well to strangers you'll never see again. Her response came within minutes, "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything this family did for you. You were nothing when Marcus met you, and you're nothing now. Enjoy your pathetic life." I screenshot it, saved it to a folder I labeled evidence of character, and then I did something radical. I let it go. Because here's what I'd learned. People like Patricia Jones don't change. They don't suddenly become kind or self-aware or capable of genuine reflection. They double down. They attack. They prove your point better than you ever could. The test I'd given them at the gala wasn't really about them at all. It was about me. About whether I could trust my own perception. About whether I'd been crazy to feel unwelcome, or whether my instincts had been right all along. They'd answered definitively. 6 months after the gala, I was promoted to Executive Director of Second Chances. $75,000 a year. Not billionaire money, but money I'd earned. Money that came from work that mattered. I moved into a bigger apartment. Still in Brooklyn, still modest by Jones family standards, but with an actual bedroom separate from the living room and windows that let in morning light. I bought real furniture, still second-hand, but good quality stuff that would last. Built a life that was wholly mine. Teresa helped me move. We were carrying boxes up the stairs, laughing about my collection of mismatched dishes, when she said, "You know what's different about you?" "What?" "You're lighter. Like someone cut strings I didn't even know were there." She was right. The weight of trying to belong somewhere I wasn't wanted, of molding myself into someone else's expectation, of constantly wondering if I was enough, all of it was gone. I ran into Marcus one more time, completely by accident, at a bookstore in Manhattan. He was alone, looking tired in a way that expensive clothes couldn't hide. "Lucy." "Hi." "Hi, Marcus." Awkward silence. Then, "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations." "Thank you. You look good. Happy." I was surprised to find I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction. Just neutral. "I'm happy," I said. "I'm glad." He seemed like he meant it. "My mother, she's... I'm sorry. For how she treated you. How we all treated you." "Okay. That's it. Just okay." I looked at this man I'd spent 7 years with, this man whose family had made me feel worthless, and I realized something profound. His apology didn't matter. It didn't change anything. It didn't heal anything. Because I'd already healed myself. "Marcus, I forgive you. All of you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." His eyes got wet. "I should have defended you. I should have stood up to them." "Yes," I agreed. "You should have. I loved you, you know. I still don't." I held up my hand. "That's not fair. To either of us." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I hope you find happiness," I said. And I meant it. Real happiness. The kind that doesn't come from your mother's approval or your bank account. I left him standing there in the biography section, and I didn't look back. That night, I had dinner with my support group women. 8 of us crowded into my new apartment, eating takeout Thai food and drinking wine that cost less than $10 a bottle. These women knew my story. They'd lived versions of it themselves. The rich husband who left, the family that rejected, the struggle to rebuild. But they also knew my present. The job I loved. The pottery class where I was getting slightly less terrible. The fact that I'd started dating sweet Marcus and it was going nowhere fast, but it was fun and kind and easy. To Lucy, Teresa raised her glass. Who taught us that the best revenge is living well. I don't know about that, I said. Living well isn't revenge. It's just living well. That's enough. We drank to that. Later, after everyone left and I was cleaning up paper plates and chopsticks, I thought about that gala. About standing in that ballroom in my Target dress, watching Marcus's family reveal exactly who they were. They'd failed my test so completely, so spectacularly, that it had freed me. Because here's the thing about testing people. Sometimes the point isn't to catch them failing. Sometimes the point is to confirm what you already know so you can stop questioning yourself. Stop wondering if you're too sensitive, too difficult, too much, or not enough. Sometimes the point is just to know for sure, so you can walk away without looking back. I never saw any of them again. The Jones family continued their charity galas and their society pages and their tax-deductible generosity. Marcus remarried 2 years later, not to the Instagram model, but to a venture capitalist's daughter who understood his world in a way I never had and never wanted to. I heard through the grapevine that Patricia still complained about me at dinner parties, spinning stories where I was the gold digger who'd shown her true colors, the social climber who'd embarrassed the family. Let her. Her story said more about her than they ever could about me. I kept working. Kept helping women rebuild their lives. Eventually moved into a house, small, but mine. Met someone who treated me like I'd always deserved to be treated, with respect and genuine affection and zero interest in molding me into someone else. The Target dress stayed in my closet for years. I couldn't quite bring myself to donate it. It was a reminder, a tangible piece of evidence from the night I tested my in-laws and they failed so catastrophically that it set me free. Sometimes freedom looks like a wrinkled polyester dress and $12 shoes. Sometimes it looks like standing in a room full of people who think they're better than you and realizing you don't need their approval to know your worth. Sometimes the best thing terrible people can do for you is show you exactly who they are, so clearly and definitively that you stop making excuses for them. The Jones family taught me that. It's the only thing I'll ever thank them for. So that's my story. What seemed like the worst night of my life, standing in that ballroom, absorbing their cruelty, turned out to be the beginning of my actual life. The one where I stopped performing for an audience that would never applaud. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever tested someone and had them fail so completely it actually set you free? Have you ever dressed down to see how people would treat you? Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, your city, your state, your country. And please, if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you had to prove your worth to people who'd already decided you weren't worthy, hit that like button and subscribe. Sharing these stories matters. Your story matters. You matter, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Where are you in your journey? Are you still in the ballroom, or have you made it out? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and I promise, you're not alone. And remember, the people who treat you poorly when they think you have nothing are showing you who they really are. Believe them. Thank them for the clarity. And then build a life so full of genuine connection and purpose that their opinion becomes irrelevant. That's not revenge. That's freedom. See you in the next story.